All right, let's get to it. So, what is the art of the switch? The problem that a lot of us have, especially in our departments, but anybody that takes phone calls or even people that come in, is that they, customers, want something that we don't have. And we do have cars in stock. Yes, inventory is low for a lot of brands and dealers. But if you look outside, there is a car, right? It's not like you have zero inventory, but the customers usually want something else. Where do we see it the most? We see it with brands that are still struggling with inventory, like the popular brands, Honda, Toyota. And we see it a lot, specifically with different fuel efficiency levels. So between gas cars to hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and electrics. Uh, a dealer might have, and usually will have the most popular ones right now, plug-in hybrids. So those are the hardest one to get. So dealers don't have those, but they have gas cars and maybe electrics, but customers don't want those cars. What I used to deal with when selling BMWs, even before that Volkswagen and Audi, is that sometimes it'll be a performance model, that halo car that has this appeal that everybody think they want, but it's really hard to get. And even if we had it in stock, it would be too expensive, like an M3, BMW M3 or BMW M5, or back all the way to Volkswagen, the Golf R or R32 back then. So uh, everything gets easier when you have a reason and you have a system. So first, let's talk about why we need to know how to switch people. So people take long time to decide on cars. You would think that we get those statistics. People do like 1.4 visit to dealers, and we always, for some reason, people think that once somebody inquires about the car, they're going to buy within 7 days. The reality is, once you actually survey customers, buyers, is that from the day that they decide that they might want to get a car until they actually get it, it's an average of 3 months, which is a really long time. And during those 3 months, we know we're supposed to follow up, but really don't know how to follow up, because especially when we're talking about those things that are hard to get, like in hybrids, how, what is the old school follow up? Hey, you still interested in this car? Well, if yes, then yeah, come on down. But we don't have those cars. So why do we even ask them if they're still interested? Oh, you interested? Well, let's put a deposit and you're still not going to get it for 3 months and the price will be crazy. So people still buy, but we don't know how to follow up. And a lot of times, especially now, within those 3 months, they change their mind, either to maybe different brand and something comparable, or maybe something else completely. They thought about a hybrid, or I see this a lot with minivans. So Toyota Sienna, hybrid, all-wheel drive, everybody wants that car, right? So the waiting list could be from a couple of months to a couple of years, especially like I heard in Canada, is just getting ridiculous. And the price is super high. Right now, people pay like $60,000 for a Toyota minivan. When I sold minivans with Volkswagen, to get somebody to pay 25,000 was a battle. Right now, people pay for it, but a lot of people will look at those prices and the situation and will say, "No, forget it. I'm going to buy something else." So, as a car sales professional, you have a chance because you know they're a buyer. You have a chance to talk to them, and you can sell them that something else, or at least swing in it. You try it out. Uh, Another reason is that we still have production issues, but also production a lot of times cannot keep up with changes in demand. Those like huge manufacturers, Toyota, Volkswagen, they have planning that goes on for years. So if suddenly a minivan becomes too popular, they just cannot keep up with that. And another reason could be that it's above my pay grade, but we know about a lot of different regulations. So sometimes those regulations would kind of like stop a manufacturer from bringing like performance models, gas guzzlers. They're limited on how many they can sell of those. And it could be something else, maybe like some truck issues. There are restrictions of what kind of trucks can be imported to United States. So we just have to deal with that. But those people, those customers, we know they need a car, or at least they think they want a car, and they will buy something. So we need to have a system on how to get them from that situation where they are right now to to get them something that we have, and maybe even something that works for them. Because right now, another reason is that a lot of times people choose or think they decide what they want to buy from very superficial internet research. So, for example, okay, think I want a sedan. Let's go to Consumer Reports. What's number one sedan? Oh, it's a Corolla. Great, that's it. I'm getting a Corolla. No research as to who's number two and what's the difference, because number two could be exactly just as good with this very marginal difference, but because it's number two, it's also going to be much cheaper. But people go for that number one, or same with hybrid versus plug-in hybrid, or gas car, right? So they think, okay, somebody told them, well, you should get plug-in, RAV4 Prime, which is a plug-in hybrid. But there's the hybrid, which is almost as efficient. It's easier to get, and it'll be cheaper, definitely cheaper. Or there's a gas that maybe if you're on the budget, if you're trying to save money, that might make more sense. So you could be that professional that if you know those numbers and know how to expose the customer to them to understand, to make sure they understand the math and make a wise financial decision, that's the value that you bring. Right now everybody's asking with a Tesla and Carvana, what's the value? What value do you bring as a salesperson? Why do we need you? Why can't I order a car and pick it up or have it shipped by Amazon? This is how you can show your value. All right, so let's talk about the systems that don't work, the old school. I remember days, again, let's go back to when I sold Audi Volkswagen. So there will be an Audi A8 that nobody wants. It's on the lot for over a year. We celebrated the birthday, and the manager is freaking out. How does he decide he's going to sell it? There's a $2,000 spiff on this car. Sell that car, get $2,000, right? So they just push salespeople to push that car on anybody they can. Oh, you come here to look at a Volkswagen Beetle? Let me show you this beautiful A8. That used to be like a joke. It used to be funny, but people actually do that. So it doesn't work these days, right? You cannot sell what you want to sell, what your manager told you to sell. You can try to sell what might make sense, but you have to figure out what makes sense. It cannot be just based on what you want to sell. Bait and switch doesn't work. Okay, what is a bait and switch? It's this, again, old school technique. Somebody calls in, I want a plug-in hybrid. No problem, coming down. I'm looking at one right now. They come in, oh, it just sold, but here's the gas car. Don't do that. That doesn't make sense. It just upsets everybody. Most of the time it doesn't work, and when it works, it's just gonna bite you back in the ass in the long term, because that customer is not going to come back. Another thing that doesn't work is selling on your personal preferences. You might believe that some car makes a lot of sense, this model is the best, but if the customer comes in and asks you about something different, don't switch them based on what you believe. Okay, you have to research. There's a whatever, cover for every pot. That's the censored version of the other saying. But every car can be sold. Every car could work for somebody, if not for practical reasons or like comfort or performance, then maybe for the price reasons, right? There could be cars that are not that great, but if they're cheap enough, then it makes sense. So forget your preferences. Find out what works for the customer, and I'll break it down exactly how to do that. So what does work? What does work is this system definitely works in person, because in person you can do actual fact finding, you can ask a lot of questions. It works great on the phone, and that's why phone follow up is still extremely important. Once you have this tool that I'm giving you, you'll be much more confident and comfortable making those follow up calls, because you'll have something to talk about and you'll know how to do that. So it works great on the phone, and it's just like a 1-2 punch. Is if you make the phone call and nothing really happens right away, you didn't make the sale or schedule an appointment, you follow it up with an email which has some content to give the customer something to get them to think, and maybe move the ball and maybe schedule the test drive a little bit later. So here's how this system works. It'll have three major steps. First step is preparation for the phone call. Then there's the actual phone call, and there's the follow through. Preparation is, I'll talk about, it's basically numbers that you need to understand. Phone call, we'll break it down in pieces. And the follow through is after you explain and ignited this interest and maybe started them thinking about other options, you follow up with proof and math and some explanation and convincing that can move it to the next step. And then, you talk, we spoke on the phone, then I send you an email, then I have the right, and it's totally reasonable for me to follow up with another phone call in a couple of days and ask you, did you get the email? Did you have any questions? Does it make sense? Are you ready to move ahead? So it's just moving the ball, right? Like in football, you cannot get touchdowns all the time. Sometimes you just have to move the ball a couple of feet at a time, but in the end, you're going to get that sale. So preparation. What the main thing you need to do is to be able to talk about different numbers, especially right now when we're talking about different styles of cars: gas, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, electric. So the three things you need to be able to understand and explain is annual mileage, annual gas cost, and break-even point. What is annual mileage? Is how many miles that customer drives on average per year. It's pretty simple, right, to us as professionals, especially if you deal with leasing a lot, because anybody that leases, they need to know how many miles they drive per year. But the majority of the population don't lease and they don't know. And if you ask normal customer, that's in the market for economy brand, how many miles you drive per year, they have no idea. But what they do have an idea is how far they drive per day. So the question you can ask and then to extrapolate is, if you know that I drive 10 miles from home to work or to school, that means you multiply by two, that means I drive 20 miles per day. 5 days per week, 20 miles per day, 100 miles per week. Over a year, take vacation out for easy calculation, 50 weeks, 100 miles by 50 weeks, 5,000 miles. That's it. That's my commute. That's as easy math that you can do with anybody. Uh, Commute length by two, that's per day, by five, that's per week, by 50, that's per year. Okay, so if I drive 10 miles one way to work, that means I drive 5,000 miles per year. That's my annual mileage. If you want to get complicated, add a little bit for vacation, go ahead. But this is just to keep things simple and so you can have this conversation with the customer. Next one is annual gas cost. Again, if you think about this, you can figure it out. But a lot of people have no idea what that is. How much do I spend per year on gas? So if I drive 5,000 miles and the gas is $5 um, per gallon, I need to know my gas mileage, right? So if it's a drive again, let's try to make it really easy. 5,000 miles. If my mileage is 50 miles per gallon, I have this really great hybrid, let's say, hypothetic, right? That means that I buy or use 100 gallons, right? Check me. Again, I'm doing this on the fly, but you feel free to use a calculator. 100 gallons, $5 per gallon, $500. Sounds right, right? If I drive 5,000 miles and my mileage is really great, $500 per year makes sense. Most people, once they do this calculation, cars are not as efficient. It'll be more like $1,500 over $2,000. So that's important to know how to calculate that. Once you have this, the important calculation is if you take you can compare or basically compare two different models that the customer can buy, that hybrid that will take years to get, or the gas model that you have on the lot. If you can calculate for both of them how much customer will spend per year, you'll be able to tell them this. Okay, hybrid costs 5,000 more. You could save $200 per year on gas. If it's 5,000 more and per year you save 200, 5 by 5, it'll take 25 years to recuperate that extra money that you spent on a hybrid. That's what I mean by math. And so again, for preparation, three things. Annual mileage, annual gas cost, break even point between gas, hybrid, or maybe electric. Electric gets a little bit more complex, but still we can throw this in. And the last thing is just for you to play with. There's an amazing resource that you can and should use with these in these conversations or emails is fueleconomy.gov. .gov means it's a government site, and it has a lot of tools where you can do these calculations and comparisons together with a customer, or you can do it and just like screenshot or link it and send them in an email. So it's a great resource. So once you're prepared and you know how to do this math, you have to be able to communicate this. So right now I communicated it to you in a few words. It's kind of shaky because I don't do this every day, but if you practice, you have to get really good with this because this is how you're going to make those sales that otherwise you will lose because you just don't have these cars. Then we get to the phone call. So the phone call is obviously the most important part. Phone call, we started by opening, acknowledging, and validating their choice. What does it mean? Well, I inquired about a RAV4 Prime, so you confirm this is the car you're thinking of getting. Great choice. It's a great car. I'm never going to start with, oh, too bad you're never going to get this. Oh, those are too expensive. Those are not worth it. Forget about it. No, make me feel as a customer as I'm doing the right thing. Positive reinforcement. Great choice. It's one of the best cars. I love this car. Awesome car. No problem whatsoever. So you acknowledge their choice and you move to the most important part of the phone calls, the questions. I've done separate video on questions. I'm a huge believer that this is the main skill you can have as a salesperson is to ask the right questions and to listen and to just follow up with more questions because this is how you can convince them, right? If you don't know their situation, you don't know. You're coming from your standpoint. You have to see things from my way as a customer. My rule is on any phone call, before I give you any information or try to sell you anything, I'm going to ask you the minimum of 4 questions. Okay, just make this a rule, put it on a post-it on your computer. If you do this on every phone call, your closing percentage will just significantly increase. It'll make you a lot of money. In this situation or situation like this, when it's a difficult model, I would have a habit of having those 4 questions in 4 different categories. One is buying motive. What made you consider a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid for your next car? The answer that I want to hear is I want to save money. Okay, this is if they want to save money, it's going to be an easy transition for you, and I'll show you later. Second question is trade replacement. Are you replacing or adding a car? I'm not going to ask if you trade the car because that, they might be selling the car to CarMax or maybe giving it to the child, but it's important to know if they're adding a car in the family or replacing an existing one because it's a different conversation, right? Like about mileage, it's hard to have this conversation. Well, it's not hard, but it's possible to have this conversation. It's a different conversation, sorry, when we're just comparing two hypothetical cars to maybe the car they already had that we know what the mileage they were getting to something else, right? Third question is the ownership history. How long have you had it? This will tell me or give me an indication how long they usually keep their cars. I'm not going to ask how long you're going to keep your next car because most people will say, oh, until the wheels fall off. But if you ask them about their previous history, usually it's going to be 3 years, maybe 5 years. And it will help you. Remember, we spoke about preparation and break-even point, how many years it takes to recuperate the extra cost of that hypothetical car that we don't have. This is important. If I never keep a car more than 3 years and it takes me 6 years to break even, then I don't need that hybrid, okay? And the last fourth question is the driving habits. How long is your commute? Not how many miles you drive per year, but how long is your commute? So together you can figure out the annual mileage that you can use in those conversations. So again, 4 questions: buying motive, trade replacement, ownership history, driving habit. Once I have this, I can figure out in which way I'm as a professional, I might want to consult my customer as to an alternative to the car that will be maybe too expensive or maybe it will take too long. And if you really ask those questions and ask some follow-ups, you'll figure out their timeline as well, because people will tell you, oh, my previous car I'm replacing, not really replacing because it got totaled. Oh, it got totaled. That means they cannot wait a year for Sienna. They need a car right now. Okay. So those questions will help you. You ask those questions. Now, next really small step is to transition from those questions to something, an idea that you have. And it could be something like, well, RAV4 is a great car, but from what you're telling me, I think it might not be the best car in your situation. Can I tell you why? Okay, I like this way. It's really simple. Another more structured approach is feel, felt, found, and it goes like this. Well, many people, many of my clients feel that the hybrid is the best choice because it's more efficient and it's, everybody says it's the best car. And I felt the same way. But once I did the math, I found that it might not be the best choice in every situation. Can I tell you why? Of course, they're going to say yes. And then you go to the next step, which is the pitch. The pitch is what you think will work. So I'm not going to tell you what works right now because you have to be the professional. If I gave you the tool to get all the information, you know your brand, you should know your cars, so you should know what could be the alternative. So, really basic and most popular example right now is somebody wants a hybrid, it's impossible to get, you have the gas car. Another example could be performance car. Like I used to deal with this. It's a little different and a little weird, but like I said in the beginning, we would get inquiries on BMW M3. So if I have a conversation and I find out that the person um, never had a BMW, never had a performance car, is not going to race this car, looking for maybe specific payment range, then I'm going to say, you know, M3 is an awesome car, but for what you're telling me, I think there's another car that might work better for you. Have you ever test driven the 330i? Or maybe, whatever, but something more affordable that I have in stock that I can actually sell and I can close that deal because, I can get it approved. First time buyer is not going to get approved on an $80,000 car. So something that you think that might work. Another example, it could go the other way. Somebody calls on a hybrid and you have a bunch of electric cars for some reason, they're pushing and nobody's buying. So if we had this conversation when I drive 10 miles one way, which means I drive 5,000 miles per year, I would be a perfect candidate for an electric car. So you can go that way. If it's a minivan, everybody wants that Sienna or Odyssey, and it's impossible to get. But instead of Sienna, you have a Pilot. And I'm sorry, instead of Sienna, you have a Highlander, which is a seven-seater. Instead of Odyssey, you have the Pilot, which is a comparable car. Not as good of a car. I'm not saying it's better. I'm not going to say that. But we can get this. The mileage will be close. It'll be so much cheaper. So it's something that I can offer. Another way that you can go with the pitch is a used car. Okay. Um, okay, so go from brand new RAV4 hybrid to some used one that you might have. If you know your inventory, you know which way to go and how to show numbers that might make sense. And another way, we talked a little bit about leasing. I'm a huge fan of leasing. I still lease my cars, and I made a lot of money by leasing, especially luxury cars. But let's say somebody wants again that Sienna, right? Sienna is impossible to get. We figure out the math, we figure out what they're looking for, how long they keep their cars. And I will say, I have an idea. How about this? How about you lease a Highlander? We have something really special for it. You're going to save that much money. And then at a 2 year mark, we're going to reserve an income in Sienna. So next, your forever car will be the actual car that you want. How does that sound? So that's the pitch. And then trial close is the next step. And the trial close is just like did right now. How does that sound? What do you think about this? I'm also a huge fan of alternative close. So I can combine alternative close with trial close and say something, hypothetically, based on what I told you, would you be more open to leasing a new Highlander or maybe buying it and keeping it for longer? So now the question is not whether you're going to get that Highlander, it's just how we're going to get this, right? So just moving thing along. And that's it, right? And if you can get a test drive out of this, this is all we want, okay? We don't want to sell them over the phone. We want to the purpose of this is if you can get the customer to come in, they wanted a Sienna, you got them to come in to test drive a Highlander, that's a win, right? That's you're already like 90% close to the sale. If somebody wanted a hybrid and you convinced them to test drive an electric car, that's awesome because people love driving them, right? They're amazing to drive. So that's what we want. We want to get for a test drive. A lot of times you're not going to get that test drive. So, like I said in the beginning, after the phone call is done, you follow through. You follow through with content. What kind of content? So, fueleconomy.gov is a great content. You pitch some other model, a video to walk around and test drive of that car will be great content. Cars that we have in stock, right? So somebody wants a hybrid or plug-in hybrid, and you explain to them that maybe hybrid is not the best thing. You follow up with a list of gas cars you actually have in stock, and you reiterate like those are the cars you can get right now, and I can get you something special. Don't talk about the price, but something, right? Again, just provide some content. That's not your follow-up should not be, are you still in the market? And tell us about your experience. That's nonsense. Give them something. People are shopping, right? They watch YouTube videos, they read articles, they're actively doing their research. Help them do that. All right. So again, to reiterate, 3 steps: preparation, phone call, follow through. The phone call, break it down to introduction, you confirm their choice and validate their choice, ask a lot of questions, transition to your pitch, something that you think would be a good idea that you can sell right now, this week, and trial close. So it's been a little long, but it's kind of an advanced technique. Usually I do this as a training session over an hour, and I've done this in about 25 minutes. I hope you find this helpful. Thank you. Like, subscribe, share it, whatever people do.